was like, Mom, by the way, you've never broken any bones, have you? She's like, yes, one time when your dad pushed me out the car while we were driving.
You were born and raised in Dagestan for at least 4 years.
Correct.
And then you moved to London when you were 4.
Correct.
And then you had some pretty terrible experience with father figures. Biological father wasn't in the picture much.
My biological father was an alcoholic abusive, which I guess I'll call it what it is. It didn't affect me. I will be very honest. It wasn't something that has caused me trauma or something that lives with me, because I guess it was just kind of out of sight. Obviously it's affected my mom very deeply, and my mom's a very like hardcore, strong Russian woman. So she'll tell me like stories, and it's funny, like I get reminders of what she's been through every once in a while, but it's just weird because she's so blasé about it. Recently, she just had a little incident, and she fractured her shoulder. So I was in the hospital with her, and I was like, Mom, by the way, you've never broken any bones, have you? She's like, yes, one time when your dad pushed me out the car while we were driving, and so it's just, I guess that's just Russian moms. Sometimes they're just like strong, like Eastern European people are just very strong people, and they can just kind of like, they're very blasé about things. So for me personally, that didn't really affect me. My mom and my stepdad started dating. They met in Moscow. They dated for a year and a half, 2 years, then trialed living out in London. And then eventually he proposed, and we moved to London, and it was great until it wasn't great. Eventually that kind of got rocky. And yeah,
How old were you at this point?
I was 8 or 9. Yeah. And basically he cut us off, and they kind of went their separate ways. And at that point I realized very, very quickly I had to become the man of the house.
Yeah. Because she was working at NHS.
Yeah, she worked a couple jobs here and there. She was a receptionist at NHS. So for anyone who doesn't know, in your audience, NHS is the public healthcare service in UK. And I don't know if you've ever been to NHS hospital. I went once, and it's just brutal. I'm sure, as you know, like you're just there stuck waiting for 6 hours in the emergency room. No one's tending to you. No one's seeing you. So when you're the receptionist, you're getting a lot of abuse hurled your way, because there's a lot of people who rightfully are very upset and are in a very stressed state. So she did that. She also used to work at Harrods. So just, minimum wage retail jobs. And yeah.
How was school for you? At least like the early years.
I think I had my first friend when I was maybe 9 or 10 years old. Like I was always just very shy to myself, even though, people see me online and this and that. I'm naturally very introverted. I can be loud and gregarious and outgoing if need be, but I just like being alone and to myself.
That's interesting, because you would seem like the last person that I would have thought would go and pick up a camera and start talking to it and put in their life out.
It's because I had no one who I could talk to about that. Like I started reading a book a week when I was 14 years old. Now I was always super into reading. Even when I was young, 7, 8, I used to read a lot. But then I read like hardcore self-help business books from the age of 14. So,
but why?
It's because I knew I was fucked. Like I knew from the age of 8 or 9 years old, I was fucked. And it was, I guess you just grow up so quickly. I remember even my mom used to have to always hide her bank statements, because I would be 11 or 12 years old looking at her bank statements and running calculations. How much are we spending? What's our run rate? And my mom's always been super frugal. Even to this day, she's still super frugal. As I said, just being a youngest of 7, growing up in the Soviet era, she's always learned to be resourceful and frugal and this and that. But, I would be 11 or 12 years old, and I would be looking at this stuff, and I'd be running calculations, and it was just very clear to me, like, we are royally fucked. And when you know that, and when you're the only child, especially of a single mom who's out there working and trying to make ends meet, listen, it's not like we were homeless or anything like that, but it's still, you just don't want to see your mom in that place or in that state, especially as an only son, an only child. So yeah, I guess I just got sucked into the world of self-help and self-development. And the thing is, now if you're 14 and you do that, it's so crazy how quickly things change in the world. Because 10 years ago, that shit was whack. If you were 14 and you were into self-development, you were a weirdo. You were like an outcast. Whereas these days, if you're 14 and you're into self-development, you're praised. Like, people respect that. They respect you for it. So the reason I picked up a camera was because I had no one to talk to. And that's the thing. I guess that's what's very unique about my position is you can see me going from, there's literally videos of me
it's literally ridiculous. I went and watched a few of them and they were like day in the life of a bodybuilder.
Yeah, I was super into like fitness back then. Obviously I never took it as far as you. Yeah, maybe if I had your training plans back then, I could have taken it a little bit more seriously. But yeah, I was 15 years old. It's crazy because I have 8 years of footage on YouTube. Yeah. And I was uploading on YouTube for so long just for myself. Like, I had years and years of me just documenting everything from, okay, I'm reading this book this week. So I'm reading this book. This is what I'm doing in the gym. This is what I'm going through. Oh, I have this business idea. I'm starting this business. All the way to like me signing my first client. And then going through a long drought where I wasn't signing any clients. And then I signed my first big client. And then a week later, I was making $5,500 a month. Within 2 months later, I was making $15,000 a month. Then I hired my first employee. And then 3 days later, I make a video of how my first employee left because he thought I was basically just such a shit leader. Because I was 17. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing.
It's so good though. Like, if there's one thing I regret, it's that I didn't start sooner. I started uploading. I think the first upload was in 2016, which is when I was 26. And already at that point, I'd been training for so many years. There was 2 competitions I didn't film any of that. Opened up a gym, didn't film any of that. There was like so much of my life which I didn't document, which I can only really go back and check some Facebook pictures and maybe early Instagram pictures. Like, I'm so annoyed I don't have that footage. So you
can be annoyed, but also it's,
I think it was different back then.
It was just different. Like, there was nothing cool about that back then. Now it's like all of this stuff is glamorized. All this stuff is cool. Whereas back then it's like, I'm sure, even in 2016, I was filming in the gym in 2015. I felt like ashamed. Like, I felt genuine shame. Like, I felt like I was doing something wrong. Or I would like put the tripod down on the street and like talk. And like, I felt like I was like breaking the law or something like that. So things have really changed. So, you can't really kick yourself for that.
Yeah, I remember there wasn't even, like, selfies weren't even a thing. The first 3 years of my gym training, I did not take one picture inside of a gym because it wasn't a thing. The phones weren't really that good anyway. And then even if you did take a picture, where are we going to put it?
MySpace.
Yeah, exactly. So I had to go back and look at some like holiday pictures to try and piece together, my 10-year transformation. So the game is definitely different compared to how it used to be.
It's a very different world.
Your early sort of business mind and money-making schemes, I read somewhere that you did, you were buying and selling Instagram pages.
Correct.
Growing them and selling them.
Yeah, when I was 14.
What else were you doing?
That was the first business. So basically, once again, I guess YouTube was a second evolution. YouTube at first was just like a diary to myself. And before that, a year and a half, 2 years before that, I had an Instagram page. It's actually still on Instagram. It's called Fuck the Norm, FCUK the Norm, for obvious reasons why it was called that. And up until maybe like the last 15 or 20 posts aren't me, but everything before that, if anyone wants an insight into what I was thinking when I was 14 years old, you can go to that page. I wrote every single caption on that page, and I grew that page to, I think it was 30 or 40,000 followers within 6 months. And all of a sudden, one day I get a message from a brand, and they're like, "Oh, how much do you charge for a promotion?" And this is around 2014. This is around like the movement era, where brands are starting to realize, oh, there's these pages and these influencers, and we can pay them and we can make a great return. And that was what I got sucked into the world of Telegram groups where people are buying and selling promotions and buying and selling accounts. And that was basically the first thing I did. I started selling promotions, Instagram promotions for that page. And then I was starting to get offers to buy that page.
Mm-hmm.
So I took the money I made from promotions, and what I would do is I would buy an Instagram page, let's say for like a Porsche fan page. And I would take that Porsche fan page, because that's a very niche thing. You can't really get many sponsors for that. And I would take a Porsche fan page with 150,000 followers, which back then was worth a lot more than what it is today. And I would just rebrand it to a general luxury page. And, you know, I'd lose a decent amount of engagement and followers, but at least the page was open to a lot more sponsorships and potential sponsors. And that's what I did. I just flipped Instagram accounts, and then eventually I ended up selling that first account.
I remember in my early 20s, I paid for a couple of shout outs on these bodybuilding Instagram pages, because that was the thing back then. I remember Instagram bodybuilding was like one of the biggest ones, and this is when reach was like strong. Like you were getting a lot of engagements on the reaches, and you could pay. It varied in the early days, it wasn't that much, but then they started charging more and more. So all these fitness people, because there was a lot fewer people on the fitness space on Instagram, they would pay Instagram bodybuilding to feature them, and then you would get a couple thousand followers, like organic followers from them, and that was like that was a business back in the day. Now it's obviously completely changed, but
yeah, and that's kind of what happened very quickly. Within 6 to 9 months of me getting into that, it was just everyone kept undercutting each other, and prices just of what people were charging, of what the accounts were worth, went down so much that I saw the direction it was headed in, and I just knew that it wasn't like a real business. It wasn't something tangible.
Did you notice at an early age that you had a particular strength that where you're like, okay, I'm good at this?
Not really. I wish I could say I was one of those kids when
there must have been something though.
Yeah, but I wish I could say I was one of those kids who was like 7 with a lemonade stand, but I wasn't. Like I wasn't one of those kids that went and brought candy to school and sold it to people.
You understood social media.
I wouldn't say necessarily understand social media. I think I'm just a very logical person. I think people are just very emotional in their decisions. I'm very logical, and I can pull emotion out of something and look at things for what they are. And I think that's why I've done so well in life, because as you continue to grow in life, probably the biggest hurdle you're going to face is managing people. And managing people is all about removing your emotions and you have this idea of who you want someone to be and who they actually are. And those two things aren't the same a lot of times. So I wouldn't say that I'm naturally gifted at business or this or that. I think it's just when you go through a tough upbringing, and you go through an upbringing where you have to see reality for what it is. I think from such a young age, I had to see reality for what it was, not a clouded picture, this is reality, and you have to face reality. And when you know how to face reality and you know how to not run away from things, you're a very, very powerful person. And you can you can have any university degree, you can have any this, that. It doesn't teach you critical thinking, and it doesn't teach you how to look at situations and look at real world problems and figure out, okay, I'm fucked. How do I unfuck myself here? So yeah, I definitely wouldn't say I was a born business savant or anything like that.